You used to be okay with the silence. That's the part nobody talks about. There was a time, earlier in this, when the silence felt like something you could live inside. When you could rationalize it, soften its edges, make it mean something other than what it was. You told yourself he was processing. You told yourself he needed space. You told yourself that what was between you didn't require constant contact to be real. And some part of you believed it. You sat inside that silence and you found ways to make it feel okay. Not good. Not what you wanted, but survivable. And now something has changed. The silence is the same. He is doing exactly what he has been doing. No more contact, no less. Same patterns, same absence, same periodic appearance and disappearance. He has not changed. The silence has not changed. But you are sitting in it differently this week. You noticed it a few days ago. You caught yourself feeling something you haven't really let yourself feel in a while. Not grief exactly. Sharper than grief. Something closer to impatience. A low heat in your chest when you think about it. A quality to your thoughts about him that is less tender and more direct. Like a question that used to feel dangerous has started feeling necessary. How long is this going to go on? If that question arrived for you recently, if you felt the silence shift from something you were living with to something you were done living with, leave a like and subscribe to stay connected. Drop "I deserve more than this" in the comments to anchor this energy, because what you're feeling is not a setback. It's a signal, and the timing is not accidental. Something changed in the sky today that changed something in you, and it is showing you exactly where you are in this journey, which is further along than you think. Today, March 6th, 2026, Venus moved into Aries. This is not subtle energy. Venus in Aries doesn't do subtlety. She doesn't do patience for its own sake. She doesn't do waiting indefinitely for someone else to decide whether or not you're worth showing up for. Venus in Pisces, where she has been until today, moves like water. She flows around obstacles. She finds the shape of whatever container she's given. She forgives. She hopes. She sustains herself on the invisible connection, on the soul recognition, on the sense of something profound underneath the surface, even when the surface is offering her almost nothing. That energy served a purpose in this journey. Venus in Pisces taught you how to love without conditions. She taught you how to hold something real, even when it had no external form. She kept your heart open through a period when closing it would have been easier and arguably more practical. She was the energy that made you stay when every logical argument said to go. And there was a reason for that. The love that comes from Venus and Pisces is not delusion, even when it looks that way from the outside. It's an attunement, a recognition that operates below the level of reason. But Venus in Pisces also has a shadow. And the shadow is this: she can love without requiring anything back. She can sustain herself on potential and memory and the sense of something coming. She can wait in a way that stops being faith and starts being self-erasure. She can make herself very small and call it spiritual. That changed today. Venus in Aries wants something. She knows what she wants. She feels no particular shame about wanting it. She doesn't dress up her desire in spiritual language to make it more acceptable. She doesn't package her needs as something that would also conveniently benefit him. She just wants what she wants, clearly in the present tense without apology. And what she wants is not his potential. Not the version of him she has been holding in her heart. Not the relationship that will exist when he finally heals and steps up and becomes who she knows he can be. She wants something real, now, from an actual human being who is actually here. That shift landed in you today, whether you tracked it consciously or not. The low heat in your chest, the sharpness when you think about the silence, the question that arrived unbidden about how long this is going to go on. That's Venus in Aries waking up in your emotional body and doing what she does. She's not destroying the love. She's upgrading the standard. Mercury is still retrograde in Pisces, which means the emotional processing happening in you right now is not linear. Thoughts are arriving from unexpected angles. Something you told yourself about this connection 3 months ago is resurfacing, but it looks different now because you are seeing it from a different place. The retrograde is pulling back old conversations, old moments, old versions of the story you've been telling about his silence. And Venus in Aries is standing next to all of that and asking a simple question. Does this still add up? And the honest answer is starting to be no. You have been holding two things simultaneously for a long time. The first thing, a bone-deep conviction that this connection is real, that what you feel for him is not ordinary, that the recognition between you, whenever it exists in whatever form it exists, is not something you can replicate with someone else, that the soul-level quality of this has a meaning that your ordinary life can't fully contain. The second thing, the daily, concrete reality that he is not here, that his absence is consistent and his presence is unpredictable, that you have been the one doing the emotional labor of this connection, mostly in private, mostly without any confirmation that he is doing anything similar on his end, that the outer reality and the inner reality do not currently match. Cognitive dissonance is the psychological term for holding two contradictory beliefs or experiences simultaneously. Leon Festinger, the psychologist who named the concept in the 1950s, was studying belief systems that survived contrary evidence. He found that human beings don't simply abandon beliefs when evidence contradicts them. Instead, they experience a specific kind of internal pressure, a discomfort that is not quite pain and not quite confusion, but a combination of both, and they work to reduce that pressure, usually by adjusting one of the two contradictory things to make it fit with the other. In the context of this journey, here is what that has looked like. You have the inner knowing, the felt reality of the connection. That belief is extremely persistent. It does not respond well to external argument. It has survived his silence, his inconsistency, his withdrawal. It has outlasted every rational conversation you've had with yourself about whether this is real or whether you should let it go. The inner knowing has proven nearly impossible to dislodge. So to reduce the dissonance, the mind has historically adjusted the other side, the side that contains the concrete facts of his behavior. And it has adjusted it by reframing, by finding interpretations that explain his absence in ways that are consistent with the inner knowing. He's not unavailable, he's afraid. He's not withholding, he's protecting himself. He's not indifferent, he's overwhelmed. The silence means he needs time. The inconsistency means he's fighting something. Every piece of behavior that, in any other context, would be a clear signal has been translated through a frame that preserves the narrative of the deep connection. You have been doing this for a long time, and you have been doing it well, too well. Because here is what Venus in Aries does to that particular cognitive architecture. She stops tolerating the reframes. Not because the inner knowing was wrong. The inner knowing may be entirely accurate. But Venus in Aries refuses to use the inner knowing as a reason to accept outer behavior that doesn't match it. She holds both things at once without resolving the tension by reducing either. She looks at the soul-level reality and the concrete behavioral reality, and she says, both of these are true, and I'm done making one of them shrink so the other one can breathe. That is the discomfort you are sitting in this week. You are not falling out of love with him. You are falling out of the coping strategy that made his absence livable. Those are two very different things, and the second one is not a loss. This is the piece that is going to land hard for some of you. The reframing you have been doing, the turning of his behavior into something more acceptable, has not only been protecting you from the full weight of the dissonance, it has also been protecting him. Every time you found a softer explanation for his silence, you handed him a version of himself that didn't have to answer for the way he was showing up. Every time you decided his withdrawal was fear rather than indifference, you let him keep withdrawing without consequence. Every time you made his absence mean something spiritually significant rather than something simply absent, you removed the natural friction that his behavior would otherwise create. You gave him the gift of a mirror that only reflected his potential back at him. That is an extraordinarily loving thing to do, and it also kept him from having to look at himself clearly. There is a concept in differentiation theory developed by the family therapist Murray Bowen that describes what happens when one person in a relationship takes on more than their share of the emotional functioning. Bowen called this the pursuit and distance dynamic. But there is a piece of the theory that gets less attention, which is what happens inside the person doing the pursuing when the pattern finally becomes untenable. Bowen observed that the person who has been overfunctioning emotionally, carrying the relational awareness for both people, doing the interior work of maintaining the connection when the other person won't or can't, eventually reaches a saturation point. Not gradually. The building is gradual, but the shift is not. At a certain point, the cost of continuing to overfunction becomes higher than the cost of stopping. The divine feminine in this journey has been overfunctioning, in the specific, technical sense Bowen meant. She has been holding the awareness of the connection, the hope for the future, the belief in his capacity, the love that keeps everything alive in the space where it can't yet exist between two physically present people. She has been doing this with enormous care and with enormous love and with extraordinary endurance. And Venus in Aries is arriving today as the signal that the overfunctioning is ending. Not because she stopped loving, because she started valuing herself. He is not as undisturbed as his silence suggests. That is the first thing to understand about the divine masculine in this particular transit. Venus moving into Aries does not just land in the divine feminine. It creates a shift in the energetic dynamic between them, and he feels that shift even without knowing what to call it or where it's coming from. Here's what he has been relying on, unconsciously, that is beginning to stop working. He has been relying on the fact that you will hold the space indefinitely, that your love is the one stable thing in his landscape, that no matter how long he goes quiet, no matter how inconsistently he shows up, when he surfaces, you will be there. Not necessarily in a way he has articulated to himself, but somewhere in the unconscious structure of how he navigates his life, your constancy has become a fixed point. Something he counts on in a way he has never had to examine because it has never been in question. The cognitive dissonance he carries is different from yours, but it is equally real. His inner knowing, the thing he cannot explain and cannot fully deny, is that this connection means something he doesn't have language for. Something significant is between you two. He has felt it. He knows what it felt like to be near you, or to have you in his awareness, in a way that nothing else in his life reproduces. And the behavioral reality on his side is that he has been running from that. Not consistently, not totally, but structurally. Whenever the connection became real enough to require something of him, real enough to move from feeling into action, from recognition into commitment, from the peripheral into the center of his life, he withdrew. He created distance. He found reasons. He has been telling himself a story too. His story is different from yours. Where your reframes have made his behavior more acceptable, his reframes have made the connection feel less urgent. He tells himself there is time. He tells himself you will understand. He tells himself the things between you exist at a level that doesn't require him to do anything different right now. He has found a way to hold the knowing without letting it cost him anything. When you stop holding the space indefinitely, that story starts losing its structure. He can feel the shift even before he can name it. It shows up as a restlessness he can't locate the source of, a low-level awareness that something has changed in his periphery that he hasn't attended to, an occasional thought of you that arrives with a different quality than the usual thoughts, something more urgent, something that doesn't settle back into the background the way it usually does. He doesn't know what to do with that yet, but he is not undisturbed. Mars is currently in Pisces, joining Mercury retrograde in Pisces. Mars in Pisces is not the blunt, directed action of Mars and its fire signs. It is action that moves from the interior, from the gut, from instinct rather than plan. What this means for him specifically is that whatever is stirring in him right now is not going to show up as a clear, organized decision. it is going to show up as something more like an impulse he doesn't fully understand, a movement towards something he hasn't been able to name. He may not act on it immediately, but the Mars in Pisces energy is working on him in the interior, the way water works on stone. Not fast, undeniably. The question is not whether something is shifting in him. The question is whether you are going to keep organizing your entire interior life around whether or not he acts on it. And Venus in Aries already has an answer to that question. Here's what changes when cognitive dissonance reaches its tipping point. For months, maybe longer, you have been experiencing the dissonance as a kind of constant low-grade turbulence. The two contradictory things, the inner knowing and the outer reality, creating interference with each other, the not knowing what to believe, the oscillating between hope and resignation, the exhausting middle space of not being in but not being out, the feeling of being perpetually suspended between two realities with no ground under either foot. That turbulence had a function. As long as both things felt equally weighted, as long as the inner knowing and the outer reality seemed to be genuinely fighting for authority, the mind stayed in the middle, stayed in the uncertainty. And uncertainty, as uncomfortable as it is, has the advantage of not requiring you to do anything. You don't have to make a decision about something that might still go either way. What Venus in Aries does is shift the weight. She doesn't erase the inner knowing. The soul recognition is still there. The love is still there. But she stops holding the outer reality at arm's length. She puts it down in front of you and she looks at it directly, without the softening filters, without the spiritual reframe, without the compassion that keeps translating his behavior into its most generous possible interpretation. And when you look at it without the filters, something becomes clear. Not necessarily about him. Clarity about him is not the point, and it is not yours to have. His interior is not your jurisdiction. Clarity about you, about what you have been accepting in the name of love, about what you have been calling faith that has sometimes been its own form of hiding, about the distance between what you know you deserve and what you have been willing to live inside. This is not a collapse of faith in the connection. This is the emergence of faith in yourself. Festinger's research found something important about how people resolve cognitive dissonance. When neither belief can fully overpower the other, a third option becomes possible. The person stops trying to reduce the dissonance by changing what they believe and starts examining why they are holding the contradictory beliefs in the first place. Not to abandon one of them, but to understand what each one is actually doing, what function each belief has been serving. The inner knowing is real, hold it, but examine what the reframing of his behavior has been doing for you, what it has allowed you not to feel, what it has protected you from having to face about what you need and what you have been not letting yourself ask for. Because underneath the reframe is a very simple and very human thing. You want to be chosen, not in the abstract, not in the soul contract sense, by this actual person, in this actual life, in a way that is visible and consistent and doesn't require you to translate it in order to recognize it. That wanting is not a spiritual failing. It is not a sign that you have not healed enough or grown enough or surrendered enough. It is the most honest thing in you. And Venus in Aries is the first planetary energy in a long time that is fully in agreement with it. She stops explaining him to herself. That is the specific, concrete thing that changes for the divine feminine when this dissonance tips toward clarity. Not the love, not the recognition, not even necessarily the hope for what this connection can eventually become. She stops doing the interpretive labor, the constant translation of his silence into something other than what it is. When he goes quiet for 10 days and then sends something brief and peripheral, she used to spend hours working out what it meant, running through the possibilities, weighing the options, building a theory of his interior from the available fragments. That labor took up an enormous amount of her attention and energy, and it served the function of keeping her in proximity to him, even when he was not proximate to her. After this week, that process begins to feel different. It begins to feel like a tax she has been paying on something that has never paid her back at the same rate. This doesn't mean she stops caring what it means when he reaches out. It means she stops needing to have an answer before she can feel okay. There's a specific psychological movement that happens here that is worth naming. The attachment theorist John Bowlby described the protest phase of attachment disruption, which is the period where the attached person increases their signaling behaviors, reaching out, monitoring, interpreting, analyzing, trying to restore the connection through heightened attention and effort. Protest behavior is not weakness. It is the attachment system doing exactly what it is designed to do, which is work to restore connection when connection is disrupted. But Bowlby also described what happens after protest. When protest behavior has run its full course without resolving the disruption, the attachment system eventually shifts out of protest mode, not into indifference, into something more self-directed. The person stops organizing their attention around restoring the connection and starts reorganizing their attention around their own life. This is not detachment, this is the end of protest. And it looks from the inside exactly like what you have been feeling this week. The silence that used to require interpretation now sits at a slight remove. The compulsion to figure out what it means has quieted enough that you can hear other things. Your own thoughts, your own wants. The parts of your life that have been waiting patiently for some of your attention to come back to them. Venus and Aries didn't break the connection. She broke the protest cycle. And the end of the protest cycle is not the end of the story. It is the moment, in the story where the divine feminine stops being defined by his behavior and starts being defined by her own. This is the shift in the dynamic that the divine masculine has not prepared for, because his entire relationship to the connection has been structured around one assumption, that she will be there, not as an arrogant assumption, not a conscious decision, a deeply embedded expectation built over time, that whatever he needs to work through, however long that takes, she is the stable point on the other end, the love that doesn't expire, the space that stays open. That assumption is the thing that has made his avoidance possible. When you remove a person's exit route, something changes in how they experience the room they are in. As long as there is a door that opens, the room is tolerable. But when the door begins to feel uncertain, when the exit is no longer guaranteed, the walls come in a little. The contained feeling that avoidance creates, the sense of being safely distant from something demanding and large, starts to shift into a different quality. Not necessarily panic. More like an unfamiliar awareness that the thing he has been keeping at a distance is not waiting at that distance indefinitely. He will feel this before he understands it. It will arrive as a shift in the specific flavor of his thoughts about you. Previously, thinking of you had a certain quality, something that could be held at the level of memory and appreciation and a low-grade longing that didn't require anything of him. The thought of you was not urgent. It was warm but unthreatening. When the energetic dynamic shifts, the thoughts become more active. They don't arrive and settle. They arrive and move around. There is something unresolved in them now that wasn't there before. A quality of incompleteness that the old comfortable holding pattern no longer resolves. He won't know what to do with this immediately. The divine masculine in this journey has a very specific relationship to feelings that carry urgency. He tends to respond to urgency by creating more distance. The more something feels pressing, the more he moves away from it. It is the thing that has made this dynamic so maddening for you to navigate. The harder you reached, the further he went. The more clearly you expressed need, the less available he became. But there is an important distinction between urgency that comes from the outside and urgency that comes from the inside. When the urgency was yours, when it arrived toward him in the form of your reaching and hoping and interpreting, he could manage it by creating distance from you. Distance from you reduced the pressure. When the urgency comes from inside him, there is nowhere to create distance from. He can't step back from his own interior. He can go quiet with you, but he cannot go quiet with himself and the thing that has been quietly building in him. The unexamined knowing. The love that doesn't have a logical home. the regret that lives somewhere below the level where he usually operates. That is where Venus in Aries is now directing energy, not outward, inward, into him, into the place where the avoidance has been keeping things sealed. The cosmic pressure is not on you this week. It is on him. Your job this week is not to apply pressure from the outside. It is to continue the turn inward that Venus and Aries is initiating in you. Because the most powerful thing that can happen between you two right now is for him to feel, for the first time perhaps, that the space on your end is not infinite, not closed, not hostile, simply no longer guaranteed. There are specific things Venus in Aries is asking of you this week, and they are different from what the previous energy was asking. The first thing is this: let the clarity land without immediately doing something with it. Venus in Aries has a natural impulse toward action. She feels something clearly, and she wants to act on it immediately. That directness is one of her gifts. But Mercury is still retrograde in Pisces, which means the communication environment is not yet ready for the full expression of what you are clarifying internally. The impulse to say the direct thing to him, to send the message that finally states where you are, to make your changed position known to him in some external form, that impulse is going to be strong this week. Wait, not forever, not as avoidance, but because what you are clarifying right now is not fully formed yet. You are in the middle of the shift, not on the other side of it. The message you want to send from inside the shift will be different from the message you will want to send when the shift is completed. Mercury retrograde in Pisces until March 20th. Let the internal clarity finish resolving before you translate it into external communication. The second thing, give the impatience somewhere real to go. Venus in Aries energy needs movement. The low heat in your chest, the sharpness in your thoughts about the silence, the feeling that something has to change, that is real energy and it needs a real channel. If you press it entirely inward, it becomes agitation. If you send it entirely toward him, it becomes a conversation that happens too early. Direct it toward yourself, toward the places in your own life where you have been accepting less than what you want in areas that have nothing to do with him. The creative thing you keep putting off, the conversation you keep avoiding at work, the relationship in your life where you have been shrinking what you need to avoid conflict. Venus in Aries is not a twin flame specific energy. She is a general upgrade to your standards. Let her work across the full width of your life, not only in the direction of him. The third thing, and this is the most important one, stop explaining his silence to other people. You know what I mean. The conversations with the friends who have heard this story. The moments where you catch yourself building the case for why he is the way he is, why the silence means what you think it means, why the connection is real, even though the external evidence is thin. Those explanations have been doing two things at once. They've been protecting the narrative and they've been reinforcing the reframe. Every time you explain him to someone else, you rebuild the architecture of acceptable absence inside yourself. You don't have to explain him anymore. You don't have to make him make sense to anyone, including yourself. Let him be exactly what he is, whatever that is, without your narration wrapped around it. And see what you find in the space that the narration has been taking up. Jupiter is turning direct in Cancer in 4 days. March 10th. Jupiter in Cancer is the energy of emotional expansion, of faith in what feels like home, of the kind of abundance that comes from deep inside rather than from external achievement. Jupiter direct means that the inward refinement of the past several months, the quiet deepening of your own sense of what you deserve and where home actually is about to start moving outward. It is about to start looking for actual form in your actual life. You will feel this as an opening, a sense that what has been compressed and interior is ready for something more spacious. Let it come. Don't force it into the shape of him. Let it find the form it wants to take. The sky this week is not asking you to give up on the connection. It is asking you to stop making his silence the center of your world. And those two things, as hard as it has been to believe, are not the same. For a long time, not enough was enough. That sounds harsh, but you know it's accurate. You stayed in a holding pattern that gave you very little concrete return because the soul-level recognition was so real that ordinary standards of reciprocity stopped applying. You measured the connection differently than you would measure any other relationship. You gave it permissions you wouldn't give anything else. You let absence mean presence. You let silence mean something other than silence. You accepted crumbs, some of you, and called them a meal because the quality of the crumbs was genuinely unlike anything else you had ever tasted. That was real. The recognition was real. The quality of even the fragments was genuinely different from ordinary connection. And that's exactly why the standard bent. But Venus in Aries is the energy of the self that will not bend its standard anymore. Not because the love has changed, because you have. There is a specific moment in post-traumatic growth theory, described by researchers Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, where the person who has been through a significant rupture begins to experience what they called the paradox of growth. The paradox is this: the growth that comes through suffering does not feel like gradual improvement. It feels like a fundamental shift in the architecture of the self. The things that mattered before the rupture still exist, but the hierarchy has changed. What you are willing to accept, what you know yourself to be, what you understand yourself to deserve. Those have been reorganized at a level below conscious choice. You are living the paradox of growth right now. The divine feminine who entered this journey and the divine feminine sitting in the silence today are not the same person. The first one made the silence acceptable because she was still learning what this connection was. The second one has learned. She knows what is here. She knows what the soul-level quality of this is. And precisely because she knows, she also knows that love of this magnitude does not have to live inside an absence of this duration. She does not need him to be different for her sake. She is not asking him to become something he is not. She has no agenda for his healing or his timeline. She is simply done performing sufficiency on his behalf. Done deciding for him that what he has offered is enough when it isn't, because deciding otherwise would require her to sit in the full weight of what she has been living inside. That weight is landing this week, not catastrophically, not as a collapse, as a clarity. And the clarity is not the end of the story. Post-traumatic growth theory is explicit on this point. The reorganization of the self, the shift in what is acceptable and what is known to be deserved, is not a closing of the heart. It is a restructuring of the foundation the heart is standing on. The love doesn't diminish. The capacity for love often increases. But the love is no longer organized around someone who has not yet chosen it. It is organized around you. And a love organized around you is capable of things that a love organized around him could never be. It is capable of waiting without losing itself. It is capable of holding the door open without standing in the doorway. It is capable of moving through its own full, rich, present life and still carrying the knowing in its body, still holding the space in a way that has no desperation in it. That is the love that actually creates conditions for him to walk toward. Not because it withholds or plays games or strategically changes its quality, because it is whole. And whole is magnetic in a way that waiting never could be. Venus moved into Aries today. You felt it before you had a name for it. The low heat in your chest. The sharpness when you think about the silence. The question that finally feels like it is allowed to be asked. How long? Let the question stand. You don't need to answer it for him. You don't need to send it to him. You don't need to make it into a conversation or an ultimatum or an explanation. Just let it stand inside you. Let it take up its full and appropriate amount of space. It has earned its place. It is not the enemy of the love. It is the love finally refusing to disappear. That is not you giving up. That is you arriving.